All right, good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. This is Taste Life Nutrition Radio, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, where I am just super excited to have on today Bobby Uttaro. Am I saying that correctly? Awesome. Uttaro. All right. So I think your website is Robert Uttaro, so we just get that out there. But we call him Bobby, and what our goal is always for this show is to bring to you the people who are here to love and to serve and to give. And I believe that we all have that in us, and I believe that's all why we're here. I think that we're created for that. But there are some who just have really figured out their way, and I think sometimes accidentally, which is the fascinating part about life that I love so much. But it's going to be a really amazing and probably difficult topic to talk about, but I think it's one of those topics that we need to talk more about. So we're going to be talking about survivors and sexual violence, and this is going to be really special. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So as always, though, we start the show with gratitude, because gratitude can change the world. So what are you grateful for?
Many things, but currently I'm quite grateful that my mother has survived cancer.
Oh,
so
amazing.
Yeah, she has, she's just so tough, and she went through the chemo and currently has physical issues as a result of it, but the fact that she currently has survived it is just a blessing, so I'm very grateful for that and for her.
Yeah, that is a blessing. I feel your pain there, so that is a blessing. What am I grateful for today? I am grateful for being able, I think I've said this before, but it's always so much fun this time of year. I'm a gardener. I'm not the best gardener in the world, but it's my favorite thing to look outside and watch my food grow. I mean, it's the coolest thing, and it makes me really happy, whether it's the food or whether it's just flowers, the bees. It's just such an amazing, beautiful time of year. We had a nice little rain this morning, and so I just watch. I think that's it, watching the food grow. I'm eating the cherries off my tree now, so it makes me really happy. I'm grateful to have the space to do that. And I'm excited to start really digging in. One of my favorite things is I will go outside and I will put my salad together from my garden. Like, I take my bowl out there and I put my lettuce in there and whatever I'm growing and put it in my bowl, and then I go eat. It's just the best thing in the world. So
now, what's your favorite from the garden? What's your favorite that you like to eat?
Oh, that's so hard. Maybe like the poblano peppers, and I've got the what do you call the little fried peppers? I can't think of what they're called. It's escaping me, but they're the little fried peppers, shishito peppers. Those are some of my favorites. But we've got some eggplant, of course the squash and the zucchini and tomatoes. So the tomatoes are delicious though. You can't beat a homegrown tomato.
Yeah. If we lived closer to each other, you could give me the eggplant and I'd give it back to eggplant parmesan. It'd be delicious.
Oh. Where do you live? Where are you?
I'm in the Boston area.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. You're quite a ways from me, but
yeah.
Maybe I just make a special trip. I mean, this sounds amazing. Awesome. Cool. Well, let's do this. Let's go ahead and jump in. What I like to do is just really start with your story. You have such an interesting story, I think. And let's start first. I think it's important to note that you have a book. I don't always just start with the book, but I think that this book, To the Survivors, is so great, and it's so real, right? And which is your point. But you paint a picture so well. Let's just give your story. Let's start there.
Thank you for the compliments. I hope it's a meaningful and impactful book. It is raw and honest and real, and you couldn't, or at least I couldn't, tackle the issues of sexual assault without being real, honest, authentic. and I'm so thankful for the people who contributed to the book as they were as well. So how my journey began, I mean, in terms of rape crisis counseling, I was a college student, a senior in college, and women came in and made a presentation to my class, and they were like angels to me. I was just truly in awe of them. They were just so strong and so gentle, and I was like, wow, they do this like full time, like people do this work. And so they trained us on the work they did, and we watched a reenactment of a perpetrator, and that caused like just a deep rage in me, a really scary rage that scared myself. And that rage turned into a deep disgust where I really thought I was going to throw up in my chair. And God was speaking to me, and I could hear God say, will you help? And every single negative thing came at me in my own head, and just like, it's kind of hard to explain, but after class, there were opportunities to volunteer to speak to these women. So I was just terrified. The negativity was really strong. But I asked to volunteer. We exchanged information. They ultimately chose me to be an intern, and my life's never been the same since. So I've been doing this work ever since that moment.
And so in college, you were in criminal justice, right? So undergrad criminal justice. So do you have a counseling degree certification, or you just sort of went into this after graduation?
Just went into this after graduation, and then to do it, you have to do a full week of training. So my boss actually let me take time off, and I could like make work up, and because he knew how important this was to me. And yeah, it's been a counseling. I love your intro earlier, actually talking about service, and it is a blessing to serve. It's a gift to serve, and it's something I continue to choose to do. And that was part of the journey. It's to serve, to do anything in my ability to help if I can.
Sure.
And that could be in anything. So yeah, it's an act of service, and it's actually as depressing as it can be. It's quite special and really fulfilling as well.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be. You've got your really hard times, but I think that what I would love to hear about are, what are you seeing as people start to come through the difficulty of any type of sexual assault? Because I'm sure you go through, what is it, the stages of anger, right? Or the stages of whatever it is. This is not my world. But, you finally hit that point where you start to come out of it. What do you see? And I'm assuming you're dealing with the spectrum of people.
It's it is a large spectrum, and people are at different stages, and some people can really grow and really be in this great path, but something can happen, they can get triggered, and they can go downward like real fast, and that can be quite scary. So it really depends, and it comes out in different ways. So when you were speaking, one woman, I've known this woman for a couple of years, and out of nowhere she just broke down crying, like bawling her eyes out. I had no idea what was happening to her. Other times people will allude to something, but there's no tears, there's no words. You can just see this, like their affect in their face and their eyes, like looking off. And then eventually they disclose, and you have no idea what their experiences have been like in their life. What's really special is seeing when they have some growth, some where they're no longer controlled, where they when they really do take some power and control back. So one example is, and this again can take years to happen, but when a woman is no longer like constantly thinking about her ex-boyfriend, right? That's like a huge growth for her in her life, right? Other people, it's eating more, it's eating. When you work with people that are struggling with eating disorders, and that they feel more comfortable and confident and choosing to eat, for them that's a huge growth. That's a beautiful thing, and that's part of the work you do. So it's special, and it's interesting in my work because I'm able to tell them and show them where they've come in a process. So sometimes this well, oftentimes people are so hard on themselves and they really don't understand the truth about themselves, because that's what abuse can do. And it is nice to say, no, like 3 years ago, here's where you were, and look at all that you've done and come from now. And that's something that is nice to be able to do for people.
I love that so much. I mean, I see that a lot in my own practice, right? It's hard, well, and in my own life, it's hard to see where you are when you're right in the middle of it. And so when one of the things that I like to do for my clients is have like just a quick sheet to fill out. We just call it a medical symptom questionnaire, right? But it's a symptom questionnaire, and you fill it out periodically, and it helps you to see where you were and where you've come, and having people like you you're working intimately with people on a regular basis, and to help them to see where they were, and I mean, that growth, and just seeing and experiencing and feeling the growth, I would imagine is a game changer for people. When when you're just stuck in the shit, it's hard to see.
It's really hard to see. Yeah. It's sometimes it's like impossible. That's part of counseling, and trying to meet people where they're at, because they need it. There's this thing that just has to get broken down, and any way that we're able to do that, I believe, is effective, because something's getting broken down. And if something clicks in people, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. One of the things that I think about, and what I do is, I'm a biochemistry nerd, right? I like the body, I like data, but when I started...
Science was my worst subject in school. My worst in school.
Well, I wasn't great in school either, but I grew out of that. Now it's like I would just stay in school all the time. But what was so fascinating and incredible and heartbreaking was when I started doing the work that I do. I have an intake that is it's really long. People are like, "Wow, Nikki, that's a lot. That's a lot." I'm like, it is, but it gives me a lot, right? It gives me, this is your history from prior to birth until today, and for some people, that's a lot of stuff. The amount of trauma that I see, of all types, but the amount of trauma that I see in these intakes, and that I have to, in a very small way, because I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist, but to try to dig in a little bit, because, for one, I couldn't believe how much it's constant that I see this in my intake. And two, the understanding, although not my world, that this stuff sits in tissues, right? And it sits in our brain, and it sits in our, our everything around us and about us is where this trauma sits. And it's a really difficult thing to for one, we can't separate physical health and mental and emotional health, because they are one and the same, essentially. One begets the other. But it's so hard when somebody says, I have this physical stuff going on, and my mind says, you've got this mental and emotional stuff going on, and they're kind of feeding off of each other, right? Because of this, what I know about your story. And it's a hard thing. I'm constantly asking people, do you have someone that you're talking to? Some people do, and some people don't. It's a thing that I've got to constantly talk to people about. You got to get through this, and it's a hard thing to understand which thing a person needs to do to get through their stuff, because there's so many different methods that work so well, but they don't work for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, anyway, it's sort of a just string of thoughts there, but it's
so wait, do you not think that you're counseling?
So, well, yes, in a sense. It's just not my training is to be a counselor. So, yeah, to a degree.
But you're counseling.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, to a degree, for sure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And if you're I don't know this for these people's lives, obviously, but
Yeah.
when they are admitting, I guess technically they don't have to admit that to you, right? In their intake?
No, they don't have to. They do, but they don't have to. I mean, sure.
Right. So
Yeah.
they're choosing to for a reason.
Yeah.
You're seeing it. Part of my work is actually trying to teach people how to respond adequately. And what you're doing is you're then checking in with them. Whether you know this or not, you're actually seeing them, acknowledging them, and trying to help them in a way. And that sometimes actually changes and saves people's lives. Because you don't know, this could be the first time they might have shared to someone through an intake form that they have trauma. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Interesting.
And to handle it with compassion and patience and empathy, I don't believe they forget that.
Yeah, really good point. And I think that kind of leads us to, something that you wrote about, I think, to quite a degree, is the lack of empathy and the lack of understanding that people get who go through these types of assaults, sexual assaults, however, whatever degree that sexual assault is. How I find that, and you're giving examples of college girls, and this is the stuff we hear a lot, right? The frat dudes and the college girls, and who's at fault, and all it's a frustrating thing because certainly there can be fault on either side. We don't know the stories, but I don't know what I'm saying here, except that when people go through something like this and don't have the support and people don't believe them, I can't imagine. I mean, it's just another trauma hit. Yeah. How do you deal with something like that?
It's the reason why I put a victim blaming chapter in my book, because I think it's just that important in this world and surrounding these issues. One thing I knew when I started doing this work is that I would listen to people, and I knew that I would never blame someone for being raped or sexually assaulted, even if you disagree with their choices, even if, and people often talk about college and they talk about drinking. In my experience for doing this 15 years, the overwhelming majority of assaults have nothing to do with alcohol from the people I see. But even if someone is hammered drunk and just wasted, that still doesn't give someone the right to rape you. I just read a story today of a man who was found guilty of rape because he would actually, he was doing things to a woman while she was sleeping. So it's these things can happen to anyone at really at any time. So it's why are we blaming people that experience it? And many people don't blame people for experiencing it. But what you said earlier, we could really unpack that of how it stays in the body and how it affects the mind. And why are so many people admitting to you that they have a trauma history? Because what are we doing to each other? You know what I'm saying? So if so many of us are actively hurting each other, that would imply to me that so many of us don't even care enough to help each other, and we're just not listening. And it's no one's, I've never asked someone to become a counselor, become a lawyer, go be a cop. That's not the point. But to treat someone with respect and decency, and it's okay to say, wow, I can't handle this. But what you say, do you have someone to talk to? We want to be a bridge to send you somewhere to send you to someone that could be able to help with whatever the need is. And it's not just sexual assault, it's any form of trauma or pain in general.
Yeah. So one of the fascinating things
go
ahead.
Really sorry, I don't even know if I answered your question.
That's
to
okay.
Really go back to it, it actually makes me quite angry. So I will, in conversation about this, to combat the foolishness of blaming people. This is, as you said it's another trauma. Imagine, for many people, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in their lives. And so they already have to suffer through that. And then when they have the ability or the courage, whatever words you want to use, to actually disclose it, even on an intake form, not even verbally, just to write it, and then someone doesn't believe them or treats them poorly or blames them for it, you can only imagine how damaging that is. So we as first responders and people in general essentially have quite a role. We have immense power in our choices and how we treat people. So we can really lead a person down a path of destruction or a path of healing.
Yeah, yeah. I find it amazing, you know, as something as simple as your partner not helping you along your healing journey, whether it's, you know, with me and with food and with, a condition they're struggling with, or, you know, something as severe as, any type of trauma, including, you know, sexual traumas. I see that probably more than I like is people feeling like they're not supported, and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I just don't understand it. You know, it's like way outside of even my comprehension. Yeah, it's bizarre.
I don't understand it either.
So, one of the things, and I don't really know what my question is here, except it kind of sits on me because it's this interesting phenomenon on how the brain works when you go through a situation and then it gets hidden, right? You know, so you were telling stories about some of these victims who didn't remember and they totally shut it out, and obviously there are times when these things start to come back for a lot of them. How did they deal with this? How do you deal with this? Can you talk, I don't talk about how these situations happen. I mean, people are just kind of shutting down essentially, right?
It depends, because someone could have, like, a song could have, like, they could listen to a song, or they could smell something, or they could hear a story, and then that could ignite something in their brain and it could freak them out. Or they could just be like, wait, people could ask a question, I had this thought, I don't know why, and you would have maybe a conversation. On the other end, you have people, again, just like breaking down, like bawling their eyes out. And so I believe an important part of rape crisis counseling is just being able to respond to whatever is needed at that time, right? So some people, you know, I've been at book festivals and I've had, you know, a conversation for an hour with someone, and then other people will come by, they'll look at you, they'll smile, they'll walk away. And some people, again, start to really go through the emotions and the memories, so you have to be able to respond in that moment. So it really varies. But for people there's so many people that know what happened to them, but they don't talk about it, they don't share it with their partners, you know, their spouses, their families, but they do know it's there, and there are other people that actually completely repress it. And they, I can only fathom how terrifying that must be when these things come back to them. Again, all the more reason to have support systems, all the more reason to have resources out for people, regardless of where they are at in their process and memories, to be able to help them with that and then get them through it ultimately. And knowing that it's okay that memories come. That's actually normal. It's okay if someone triggers. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you haven't come a certain way. It doesn't mean that you're this awful person. It's actually more normal than people can fathom when they are triggered, or they have horrific memories, or really nightmares. A lot of people just struggle with nightmares and can't sleep.
Yeah, you have a lot of stories like that in your book. And then, and you were talking about the triggers. You know, I think that it's this fascinating thing that any little thing, depending on the person, right, can be a trigger. You had spoke about, or written about how your voice triggered a woman unintentionally, and you were just trying to help, which, it's a hard story. I'm sure it was really hard for you, and of course hard for her. I'm curious if you were ever able to talk to her again, and if there was any kind of, no.
No, and that's okay, you know.
Yeah.
I think I'm consistently even learning, but you know,
Sure.
doing this 15 years, it doesn't mean you have all the answers. And that was one moment that you're like, wow, like this is real. I can't believe that just happened. And so you can understand why there are women that don't want to talk to men, and women that don't even want male rape crisis counselors. You know, I can understand it.
Sure.
And that was just heartbreaking for me, but that was something that I had to go through, and it just, I think it made me even more sensitive and patient, which I think is a good thing.
Of course it is. I mean, that's as much as these lessons can stink, I mean, that's the stuff that helps us grow. I mean, that's what I talk about probably at least once on every show, is it's the hard stuff that helps us grow. And sometimes it's really, really hard and, you know, can really, really stink. But I think, you know, you have taken it and sort of embraced it and learned from it and grown from it. And I think that would assume that's your kind of your goal for those who you're working with as well, because obviously nobody wants to learn from a situation like this, but for you to be able to help guide people who then become healthy, happy, productive, you know, they have this horrible history, but you can help them move to this point to where it's like you said a little while ago, they're not thinking about it every minute of the day, which can just sit on, it can be just so hard when it's that, you know, heavy weight that just sits on you, right?
It's really heavy, you know, and you do similar things, again, whether you know it or not. You're taking weights off people. You're helping them in their life to do, and people talk about mental health and they bring up mental health to me, but you said earlier, there is a physical component to it. It's mental, emotional, physical, and I would argue spiritual and even sexual. So it's really all connected. It's really heavy. So we have to find ways to get the weights off. And there are ways to get the weights off. It doesn't have to weigh one down for their whole life. It does for many, but it doesn't have to. And that's, if I didn't see that, if I didn't witness that, why would I continue doing it?
Sure. Yeah. So what are some ways that you can, what are ways that you help people, or even, you know, people, maybe you refer to people as well. What are things that can be done to help people through?
For me, I'm often the first person they've ever told. So, and that can be, again, it can be as simple as someone saying, you know, something happened to me 20 years ago versus sitting with someone for 3 hours. Right? So for me, it's just responding to them and meeting them where they're at, where that could be, if they send me an email, responding to every single part of that email. That could be a text message, a phone call. Again, that could be sitting with someone for 3 hours, which I've done before, because they just needed it at the time. Right? It's not like every week we have a 3-hour session. It's just in that time for that specific person, it was just necessary. So, and then again, what do they need? And for some people, it's healthier eating habits. It's getting in touch with their body in a healthy way. And that can be yoga, that can be working out, that can be massage, that can be even sexually, and it can be truly terrifying to people.
Imagine. Yeah.
A lot of what I do too is I am able to, and I love sharing music with people and understanding, like, where are they on the process? Are they depressed? Are they angry? Are they suicidal and they want to die? Do they want to talk about God? What is it? And so depending on what that is, I try my best to help them with that and kind of guide them in that way. And music's been a huge part of my own life and just in the healing process of many survivors I've worked with.
Yeah. So music, are you a musician? Or okay, it's just music itself.
I think I'm a pretty poor musician. I play guitar a little bit, but nothing special. But I love it, and I believe it's a universal language. It's something that human beings connect with. So it's very powerful and of a wide variety, just a massive variety of different kinds of music for different people, and it's something that I found to be quite helpful.
You talk a lot about, which I love, spirituality, and your faith and your, belief in God and in Christ. How has that helped you? And then how are you able to bring that in? I know it's not always the time, right? But how does that help to guide you through the process? I mean, that's something that I like to, it's kind of my prayer every night and every morning is just help me hear you. That's my prayer to God. Just help me hear you, whatever it is, right? So what are you seeing for yourself in this whole process?
Well, I would never have done this without God. So God has called me to this. This is a calling from God. And I personally learned the most from Jesus as a counselor. When he's called the mighty counselor, I think about and meditate, and I can envision Christ as this gentle, loving man who was with people. I mean, that's in the Bible. So if I believe Jesus was helping rape victims and rape survivors while he walked this earth. So but he also taught us, I believe he gave us the gifts and taught us to do it, to do it as well, to serve, as you said earlier, right? So for me, I've learned so much from counselors. I've learned so much from crisis centers. I love them, and I love God as well. In my experience, I find oftentimes religious people not interacting with social justice actions and really getting involved. If they have this great message of God and Jesus, I would argue they should be being very involved in social problems. And then I also see people in social, nonprofits that completely deny the possibilities of faith, and they almost get angry about it. So I personally see the beauty in both, and I try to do both, but I don't bash people over the heads with it. I really don't, but I don't shy away from my faith either. So it's been everything for me. I don't do this work without God. I even prayed before talking with you to join us, to be with us, to guide us, and that we can help at least one person, through our conversation. If we can do that, then that's a blessing. And so for me, it really is, it's everything. It's my being in this world, in this work, while acknowledging we are human and we make mistakes and we try our best in our human faults. But that's where I gain strength from. I have a tattoo on my back that says strength from above. That's where I gain my strength from.
I love that. Thank you for that. And thank you for praying for us. That's a really great thing to do. I should do that. I kind of do my prayer times sort of, different times throughout the day, but I don't really think about it just before the show, and inviting Christ into the shows that I do, I think is a good lesson. It's my lesson for the day. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. The reality, it's one of the reasons I say it's spiritual. These crimes and trauma in general really does affect people's faith, where people believe and they have no belief anymore. God, there's no way God can exist because I was raped. I can understand that, and Christians should understand that. And there are people that really struggle with faith. There are people that, and that's part of my work, and that's different than a nonprofit counselor that would never, some people just would never even tackle the issues of faith. But in my work, that's what people struggle with. There are people that they feel so dirty, so ashamed, so lost, so broken, and they are God's child. They can live a healthy life, and they're not forgotten. You're not forgotten. But this is arguably the biggest thing that people struggle with, in my experiences. It's their own their faith in themselves, their faith in God, they just feel, so many people feel truly worthless and hopeless.
Yeah.
And they're not, and I believe that's part of the reason God called me to it, because I know that I would, given if presented with the opportunity, not the opportunity, presented with a situation to be able to combat that with them. Yeah. Because they are beautiful and they are meaningful, and people do have purpose, and they're not what rape tells them they are. They're not. And so that's what I try and do.
Good for you. It's so beautifully put. Thank you for that. So one of the things that you talk a lot about, of course, is advocacy. And you had stated that, hopefully I get this right, but you didn't know, and many people don't know, the resources that are so close by to help people through this type of struggle. So can you talk about the advocacy, talk about where people find these resources and how it can be helpful?
I mean, obviously technology has its problems, but there's so many benefits to it. So if you have access to the internet, you can essentially Google rape crisis center in your area, and something either is near you or it's not, but there's something at least online that exists. Depending on the need and what someone is going through, that they can find it, and they might be shocked that there might be a center within their city or really close to them. Or that's the beauty of, one of the beauties of 24-hour like hotlines and just confidentiality, that someone can call, you can talk to someone. If anyone's listening, RAIN is a national network, Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, that anyone could go to and connect with. There's resources, there's education, you can talk to people. There are things out there, but again, not everyone wants to speak to a counselor, not everyone wants to go see someone, and that's one of the cool things about a book or just online materials, that someone alone could just read something and just seek it out. It's funny, when you brought up faith, like, I would never claim to call myself a biblical scholar, because I'm not, but what I have found to be true is when Jesus says, seek and you will find. I have found that to be true. So for people out there, depending on, again, what you need, seek it, and I do believe you will find it. And it might not come the way you want or the way you expect or on a certain time period, but at some point it will.
Yeah, that's sometimes the hard thing, right? It's not our time, it's his time. And so sometimes there's, have to have a little patience. But, you have, even on your website, which is robertuttaro.com, yes, you have a resources section which has some great resources for people. So, if anybody's out there who just wants to go to your website, I think you've got resources in your book, don't you? Anyway, sorry. So
I didn't put a list in the book because things change over time.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great point.
But yeah, there are websites, and there's. I could add more resources, and maybe one day I will. I'm really big on staying alive, right? So like suicide awareness and just, that's a huge one. It's staying alive. There's resource on rape, there's resource on depression. Some people they're not saying to you, I was sexually abused as a kid. They're saying they might just be suffering with depression. And they might not understand the real root of that depression, or they do it, but that doesn't mean they're talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? So again, resources out there for whatever it is that people are going through. Seek it. And don't do it alone.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, did I read also that that some places have legal services for helping survivors?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, some advocates, in my experience, that are just like so anti-police and so anti-law, and it's like, no, hold on, there's a value in this, and there are people that want to go to the criminal justice system, and if they do, that's their choice. And throughout their process, they ideally should have people supporting them. And so, yeah, that's a special thing about legal advocacy, where some people just have questions.
Yeah.
They just have legal questions, and what would this look like, or what does this mean, or do I even have a case? So I personally love legal advocacy and helping people sort out these kinds of things. Do they really want to go to court or not? And if they do, there still might be absolutely no evidence. So even if they're really passionate about going, it's very difficult for an attorney to get a conviction. And even if one gets a conviction, doesn't mean they're going to get so much prison time that you might desire. So it's one of the reasons I talked about justice in my book, and trying to obtain justice for people in different ways, not just legally, but again, spiritually, philosophically. What does it ultimately mean, right? Like, what does justice ultimately mean, and how can one find justice for themselves when they've experienced such a horrific violation and a crime?
Yeah. So another thing that you had talked about was how we can support, and I feel like we probably hit on this a little while ago, but how as friends, family, spouses, partners, whatever it is, how we can support people through, whether we're just learning that somebody has been struggling with this, whether that person struggling is just learning that they were struggling with this. There's, and I know everybody's different, but I guess what I'm thinking about is one of the stories where somebody, just sort of sat and listened and hugged and cried, and all of those things that you do when you are there to support someone. Is there anything else that is important for people to know who are there to support their partners, friends, whatever it might be?
I give a bless tool that I have found to be easy to remember and easy to understand, right? So be a blessing to people, bless them. So be is simply believe. So if you believe them, that alone is vitally important. And there are people that lie, but it's just not the majority. It's not. When people are coming to you suffering, they're hurting inside. So believing them. The L is to listen. Listen, people often ask me, what do you say? What do you do? And I'm like, well, what? No, I listen to them first. Because it's not about what I tell them. It's listening to them. E is empathy. So empathize as best as you can to attempt to put yourself, get away from yourself, right? Like, stop thinking of yourself and really put yourself for their needs. Again, what you said earlier, serving, to try your best to understand where they're coming from and what their experiences are like. The S is safety. So depending on the issue, ensuring their physical safety, their mental, emotional, and spiritual safety. And then the last one is to support them. I wrote a story of a woman who was assaulted in college, and a man sat with her for hours. They ended up getting married.
Amazing.
I mean, and one of the things I find quite powerful about Jesus is that he took very simple, basic human beings and changed the world. Agree or disagree with Christianity? I don't know how you could debate the fact that Christianity's just grown. And he took very simple people, and I believe we have that ability. I believe God wants us to do that, to use our gifts for others. And we all have different gifts. And you have certain gifts that I don't have. And it's special when you use them for other people, genuinely, selflessly, for them. So I actually believe it's called by God to do this.
Agreed. Yeah. No, I fully agree with that. That's a lot of times it's just really just sort of my ultimate hope for reaching whoever I can reach with this show is to either find those who are serving and of service, or to be of service and help help someone hear a story that can give them guidance through whatever they're struggling with, right? And so I think that to date, everybody I've had on has been an entrepreneur and has had an amazing story that has brought them to this place where they're now serving others. And that really is what I want. I want people to know what's out in the world that sometimes they don't know. I know that my little, I get stuck in my box, right? I don't know what else there is. And so I want to open the box for people so people can see there are some really amazing people who are here to give all that they have to give to help others with whatever it is. So, sorry, a little long-winded, but I'm just super grateful for what you're doing and for spreading your message of hope and of faith. I mean, I think that that's a big part of it. I really do. So even if they don't see it, you're doing your part to spread the good word, right?
Thank you. I mean, my wife said something that it clicked with me, and I never forgot it. She said, "They'll know you're Christian by your love," and that really hit me. And hopefully that I remember hearing a pastor once. He was saying that he has all the arguments and he can discuss every theological thing, but a guy asked him, like, who is Jesus? And he has all these arguments, but he couldn't answer. And he admitted that because he hasn't shown people. And I found that fascinating, that we can show people through our actions, through our love, a glimpse of what God is.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, and I think, he lives in us and lives through us. So, of course. Right? Very good. So, as far as, I was just looking at my notes, and I have in here dealing with secondary trauma. And so will you explain what secondary trauma is?
I could be wrong in my understanding of it, but secondary trauma to me is like me actually being traumatized by doing work, or like a significant other that you might have a brother or a father or a mother, anyone who is maybe depressed or pick any number of things. And they don't even know it's due to sexual violence. Like I know people, like children that are affected by their parent, their parent. Well, I know what your mother has been through, but I can't tell you that, right? So they're traumatized in a different way, and they don't even really know it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you for that. It's kind of what I thought, but I was like, that's I can't. It's having that kind of trauma it's like the empathy trauma, which is like hard to imagine, your loved one going through the horrible thing that they went through. Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious if you
and with this work and these conversations, it's important to say, and for people to understand, it's not just like rape survivors. It's for significant others. There are people. I can't tell you how many. Like, I know men that, again, just like they're destroyed. They're destroyed when they learn what happened to the woman they love in her past. So that man needs help. That man needs some form of counseling. Like, so it's not just individuals who experience these things. It's their loved ones as well.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite stories that you can share?
Favorite? I don't know about favorite, but I can tell stories of essentially like hell on earth, and then stories of it's special where I know people that I know people that have just quit their jobs and love their lives and realize that money isn't like the only thing and the most important thing in their existence. People that it's when I said earlier about showing people where they've come from, it's quite fascinating to show, even physically, even of like a hairstyle of someone from this to that, is really, really cool to be able to show them, like, this is what you were, you know, 3 years ago, and like, look at what you look like now. Yeah, I don't know any specific awesome stories, but I would just say how can I say this? Every interaction with someone is important and special in their own different ways.
Sure. Yeah. Very good. What's so do you have, I was gonna say what's next for you? I know that you're not gonna, leave what you're doing, but do you have other plans? I know that you are, you're doing your part to get the word out, and you're doing some speaking and that kind of thing. What are the things that you see coming up for you?
I see where God leads me. I go, sometimes people ask me, like, I don't have a crisis center. I'm not like in a 9-to-5 job. This isn't a 9-to-5 for me. This is, and I work other jobs. I have bills to pay. I have, mouths to feed. And but I open myself up to God. I see where He takes me, and I'm going to Chicago in September for a book festival, and interviews like this, I'm deeply thankful. And you and I started this process months ago. Right? So sometimes people are, oh, do you have a certain time period? I'm like, absolutely not. We can go at any time as long as I'm alive, and if I'm effective, then we can do this at any time, whenever it works for someone else. So continuing to get conversations like this, spread the book out anywhere I can, and just see what happens.
Yeah, cool. So am I understanding that your work, your counseling work, is still volunteer work?
I've never been paid for this.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. Wow.
Never.
That's big.
And that doesn't mean that I haven't been paid occasionally for speaking engagements. Sure. Because I have. And it doesn't mean I just turn the money down if it's offered to me.
Yeah.
But no, no, I don't. Yeah, never.
How would you, I'm assuming you have worked with people who want to be more involved. How would you guide people who want to be more involved in this kind of work?
It's awesome. It's fun. That's another cool aspect of this. It's kind of cool you asked that question, because so many of us are so scared to have these conversations, and they're in different aspects of our society. So even in schools, they're like, no. But when I've been allowed to do this, I've had teenagers inspired that want to get involved, and they've done it. I've had teenagers they want to impact their own school, or even kids younger, which is like special. So it's exciting, and you're like, yeah, great, let's talk. And then again, depending on where they want to go. Some people, I've never done medical advocacy. I've never once have been in a hospital after a rape, but there are other people that do. And that's, again, like a calling, that they feel this way. Many people have no interest in public speaking, but they are on a 24-hour hotline. So depending on someone that is interested and genuinely wants to get involved, yeah, I talk with them, and I, again, be a bridge, send them to where they need to go, and just connect them, and hope the best, pray for them, and they have their own lives, and they're going to be planting seeds, and they're going to be doing some special things in this world. And that's another thing I try and tell people. You have the gifts. But this isn't for everyone. This isn't actually for most people. And that's fine. Like, that's okay. Never have I ever asked someone to just go do this, force someone to do this. But if you have that inside, if you have that call, go for it. And don't let fear stop you.
Yeah. Amazing. So,
and that's really true in anything.
Yeah, agreed. I think that a lot of people, a lot of us, I have certainly been one of those people who has a fear, and it's the fear, it's the insecurity, and you allow it to interfere. And I love that when you have a calling, especially when you know that it's a calling from God, you have to listen. I mean, that's what I believe, that's why I'm here. People ask me, how did you get into what you're doing? And I'm like, God, I didn't know this was what I was gonna do. I had no idea. I had certainly have a story, but it was just that knowing this is what I have to do, and I really don't have a choice, you know?
It's, well, I would say you do have a choice. You chose to accept it.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know, one of the special things of counseling and really teaching is to be able to, and even with young people, but even older adults, to be able to kind of help them in their journey and see where they go, that, you know, what I might believe is God's call on them, or maybe not God's call on them, but they're obviously talented in this, and they're obviously skilled in this, and they have a heart for this, like they have a passion for this. They should do it. So to be able to, fear and insecurity are two huge things that prevent people and loving people from doing anything, let alone actually like affecting the world in positive ways.
Yeah.
It's fascinating when Jesus says the harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. Again, that's a quote that I find to be true, and I try to get people to become laborers because they have gifts, and there are problems in this world.
Yes.
There are things that you really can make an impact with. So go do it.
Yep. Totally agree. Okay, so as far as how people can find you, whether they have questions, whether they are in need, whatever the case may be, what's the best way to reach you?
You can email me. You can go through my website, robuttaro.com. If you're interested in the book, it's on Amazon and online retailers. If the book is really scary for you, don't pick it up. Don't look at it. It's okay. But it's out there, and resources are out there, and people are out there. And yeah, I would argue that God is out there. So you are not alone, and you have a purpose. People have a purpose.
Agreed. Fully agree. Thank you so much for all that you're doing, for joining me. I've been really looking forward to this. It has been months. It's just kind of the way it goes these days. But you know, it's a real blessing to know you, to know people are like you out there who are doing the hard stuff, because you're doing some hard stuff. So thank you for that. Really appreciate you.
Great.
Yeah.
Praise the good Lord.
Yeah.
Praise the good Lord.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right. So lots of you joining us out there today. I'm so grateful for you to join us. Reach out, go to his website, or if you just need to find your local, what did you call it in your book? You called it the caring place? Is that what you called it?
I call it the healing place,
the healing
just for
place.
confidentiality.
Yeah. No, I love that. You know, there are lots of resources out there. Don't go it alone. Find the people who are there to help you and can love on you. So, of course, you can find me at Taste Life Nutrition in all of the places, the website, the social media, all of the fun stuff. So I'm always here. We're here every Thursday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live on KUHS, where we bring some really freaking cool people to this platform. So super excited about that. We continue to grow and are just having a ton of fun. So then, of course, as always, I have to say, if you are a woman or if you're a couple planning on getting pregnant, pre-pregnancy stuff, preconception stuff, reach out. Soulful Conception is sort of my heart. It is about, you know, planning for bringing our little ones into the world so we can bring in healthy kiddos and we can impact generations ahead, because our choices today, prior to conception, makes such an impact on the health of course, us, the pregnancy, our children, and our great grandchildren. So you were talking about how you know, how one person can play such a significant role in life and with others. This is one of those places. If you're wanting to get pregnant, this is a place where you can literally play a significant role in the health of generations to come. So think about that. It's a big deal. It's amazing what we can do and the power that we have to create the health of the future. So join us next week, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live, KUHS Denver, and go check out Bobby's book again, To the Survivors. For those who are ready for it, it's a great book. So Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bobby.
Thank you.
Okay. Stay with me real quick.
Mm-hmm.